Okay, so what's this guy stealing? He stole the one card I wanted. Cool. This guy's such a bitch. I'm just going crazy this turn, bro. I don't even care. I'm going absolutely ape shit in this turn. I think it's dead. Turn 1! Turn 1! Oh my god, dude. Hey, what's up? Jenazad here. Let's talk about this character, Renoa. I think that this character is pretty underrated overall as a whole. I don't see many people talk about her when they put her on tier lists or just say how strong characters can be. Normally they focus on a few other characters such as Hugo or Calipe, which, let's be honest, are very good characters, but I feel as though Renoa is a bit underrated because this character can essentially clear every single thing in the entire game, and pretty easily, I would say, as well. So the main way that you play this character is around the dirge bullet mechanic, where either using stuff such as Echo of Sorrow or using things like Flower Devoured Fate spawns these dirge bullets, where you can use them to do damage, but then they get exhausted. So the main thing you want to do is just keep them in your hand, end the turn, and then all of the bullets fire. Or you can even use something like Last Ditch Assault, which fires all of the bullets and empowers the ability. So how do you want to play this character? Well, let's go through all the epiphanies, her best teammates, etc. Let's first look at these epiphanies. So overall, the best ones that you're going to possibly choose are this first one, Outbreak of War. Let me move my camera. You get a dirge bullet every single turn and immediately after use as well. Then you also have this one where you create 2 in the discard pile, which is really good because you get 1 immediately and then it also helps you ramp. The other ones are overall not really all that amazing, but I would say the create 3 dirge bullets is also passable. Next, let's look at Instant Judgment. I would say overall the best ones for this are either this one where you don't have to use it and it just moving to the discard pile does a bunch of damage, or this one where every turn you do damage. Next, let's talk about Ballad. There is only one here that is just unbelievably overpowered, which is this one. Makes it so that all of your dirge bullets do an extra 100% damage that turn. The other ones, sure, there's some alright ones, but you don't really want to exhaust any dirge bullets in your graveyard. It's not really great to move them either. The best one is by far this one, and the other ones are just okay. Next, Flower Devoured Fate, I would say by far and not even close, the best one is this one. You get crazy combo potential, especially turn 1 using this, where you just can immediately discard, let's just say 3 cards. That's instantly 6 bullets off of 1 AP, which is insanely powerful. And the amount of damage in 1 turn you can get and how much that can set up the rest of your turns is just so much damage. Overall, that's the best one. If you can't choose that one, then generally the other best ones are just discarding up to 3 cards. Or if you're really desperate or you have a sick combo, sometimes you can do something like this where you gain retrieve. But it's really hard to set up and I don't recommend it for many people unless you have a perfect deck. So I would say those are the best things overall. And then obviously her ego skill is an amazing combo piece where it moves all of the dirge bullets from her graveyard and deck into her hand. If you have more than 9, well then it can't move anymore. But basically you can just move all these cards into hand, and if you have something like Ballad with the 100% damage buff, you shoot that and then all the bullets fire and you instantly win almost any fight I've ever encountered. The amount of damage is absolutely ridiculous. Next, her partner. Well, I'm using a crappy 3-star partner. I've been using this the entire time, and honestly, it slaps. You don't really need a 4-star or a 5-star for her to completely take over. Now, obviously, there is a partner in the 5-star pool that is incredibly good, but most people aren't really pulling for partners unless they're huge whales. And you can also use the 5-star partner off of the battle pass that's for her. It's pretty decent on her, I would say, as well. But honestly, I've had a surprising amount of success off this, not only because it gives some damage, and then you get an extra 16% after a first shuffle, which usually happens a lot, but also just this extra draw too is surprisingly good. So I've been using this the entire time, but honestly, you can do way better if you get some of the 5-star partners. But I think this goes to show that you really don't need anything crazy on this character either. I have no dupes activated, however, I did happen to pull a dupe, but I haven't used it yet. Now, as for the potential, you have to make sure you get this just for that extra damage. I don't even have this activated for Extermination Shot, and I definitely don't have this because I'm not high enough level yet. But what really mattered to me was just getting a little bit of crit chance, but overall, nothing crazy once you've gone this. Now, keep Keep in mind though, dirge bullets count as unique card damage. They are not neutral card or basic card, so this is the only one that's going to be affecting it and kind of some of the biggest parts of your damage. Now let's talk about memory fragments, because this is a bit of a weird one. So I farmed this set for 35% crit damage of 1-cost cards. It does not work on the dirge bullets that automatically fire, even though I thought it would. It works if you activate a dirge bullet, actually spend 1 AP to use it. It doesn't work when they get discarded. And you might say, okay, well, maybe that's intended. But what's very odd is something like this card, Resonating Darkness, that gives extra damage of cards that cost 1, for some reason works when they're discarded. So I'm not really sure why one works and the other doesn't, because even though there's slightly different wording, they essentially are saying the same thing. So I don't know if this is intentional or a bug, but regardless, this set kind of sucks on her. So I would probably say the best set is instead something like the Void set, which is a little bit awkward, but if you activate it, it gives you a lot of damage, which is really good. I'll definitely say this, it's early on in the game, people don't really have much. I would just say put on a crit chance neck and you're good to go. You really don't have to worry too much about farming crazy things. Now getting the crit rate neck is sometimes a real pain, but I essentially just tried to go for that and then get as much crit damage, extra damage, crit chance, attack on everything that I possibly could. I'm not even using a second set because this void damage goblet right here is just so juicy with the crit rate and crit damage. Keep in mind, the way that calculations work in this game are a bit odd. So if you have one of these goblets that gives attack percent, I believe that is only half as good as a void damage one for her, because I believe it does the calculations of multiplying everything together, and then at the very end, things like void damage are multiplied as an additional. So this is just giving you way more damage overall, even though it might not really seem that way. So overall, that's kind of how I have my Renoa set up. Now let's go over some of her best partners. Well, I suppose I shouldn't say partner, but her other combo piece characters that are going to be journeying with her. I would say the absolute best 3 characters are Ray, Cassius, and Nia. I don't really think any other characters in the game need to be used with her, although some characters such as Veronica can essentially combo with anyone really, so you can totally use them. Now, I will say early game, it can be difficult to use all of these characters in conjunction with each other, and if you need a little bit of extra safety, you could use a character like Magna or Calipe or Mika just for that extra survivability until you get a little bit stronger, maybe get some gear together. Let's first start with Ray. This is a character that kind of combos with almost everyone in the entire game. Why is that? Well, she's good with basic attacks, she's good with void attacks, she just gives morale in general, but here's the main things. Resonating Darkness, incredibly strong. You can get this one, which is just 60% damage of cards of cost 1. That's a huge boost to every single bullet, or this one as well, 40% damage for void cards. That just affects everything, which is obviously really good for Renoa. Incredibly strong, I would always take those. Snack Time is just a god Pot of Greed card. If you get this one, it's just retain, exhaust, draw 2, and heal. It's just god Pot of Greed. Obviously, that's good with anyone in the entire game. Then Dark Condensation. If you get the right one, you can get for 1 turn 50% damage to void attack cards. That's obviously incredibly strong with Renoa as well. Some of the other ones can be decent, but that's obviously the best. And then this is just giving you 4 morale, which is 80% increased damage, and that's for each bullet is getting that damage boost. Easily, Ray can just double your damage in a single turn, which is incredibly strong, clearly. But overall, she's just such great utility, and sometimes this also really comes in handy doing the damage, but especially that extra AP, because sometimes you really need that in a turn. And as for the partner, I use Arwen on her. It's just a good damage reduction partner to survive some extra hits. The actual skill itself, I don't really think is anything incredible, but it gives you a lot of survivability. Obviously, there's better choices, especially 5 stars if possible, but as a more budget option, this is clearly very good. Now, as for memory fragments, I basically just have junk on her. Basically didn't have to invest anything on this character for her to work really well. She's not really a damage dealer, she's mainly just the support. However, if you actually do have damage gear on her, I think she actually does pretty decent. Now let's talk about dupes. Now keep in mind, I do have all of her dupes, and her 6 dupe is a pretty damn good increase of damage. That's really good, but it's completely unnecessary, and I'm able to overkill things so hard that I don't really think it matters. Other than that one, I would say the most important is just the second dupe, and you do start with Ray, so if you pull 2 extra copies, you have it. This is a huge amount of healing. At the point I'm at, I'm healing for probably about 80 every single turn that Ray uses an attack card, which is honestly pretty significant, I would say. It really matters a lot in some of these runs when you're not running any defensive characters or any healers at all. But let's talk about Cassius now. Why is he so good with her? First of all, his ego skill is just really good with survivability, which I like a lot, and the quest cards are nice. Sometimes the Pop-Eyed Popper can be really good too. Generally, you're playing one cost skills, so you're able to spam the 111, but if you're able to get things like Quest Straight and be able to get the extra morale, Resolve, Fortitude, that's incredibly strong too, or Full House, the extra card. So he kind of has this RNG factor, but sometimes it can pay off hard. Devil Dice is obviously so good, being able to draw cards. You can do something like this to draw 3, 4, or even sometimes 5 cards with a single card, or draw 2, discard 2 is obviously really good because Renoa doesn't care too much about cards being discarded. So all these things can be really useful for just getting more cards. So, quick little cut in here. Unfortunate news, they actually just nerfed one of the most important interactions with Cassius. So, this card, whether it was a bug or unintentional, whatever was going on, how it worked is it would discard your hand and your entire deck into the discard pile, and then it would move all of them into the draw pile and then draw 5. Unfortunately, they have now changed it and changed the wording a little bit as well. It now just directly moves your hand and discard pile into the deck and shuffles it. So now, one of the best interactions with Cassius no longer works with Renoa, which honestly really sucks. Does Cassius still work with Renoa? Yes, but unfortunately, one of the biggest nukes that he's able to enable is now not working. Dice Trick, I would say overall is very weak and doesn't really matter, but here's another big card, Joker. Renoa is a character that really cares about specific combo pieces, like for instance using the flower to discard your hand and get a boost, or the damage boost to all of the bullets in your hand. So Joker, essentially just being a wild card that lets you choose anything, is insanely good at pretty much any point in making this happen, because Renoa is not a super AP hungry character, so she can actually afford to use something like Joker and still be able to fulfill her entire turn. As for partners, this is actually not what I use. Yvonne. This, I think, is a solid partner, especially if you're a new player. It increases your defense and it heals when you feed max copies into it, which you're going to have many. I mean, it's a 3 cost. It's actually healing 60% of your health at the start of the turn, assuming you haven't attacked. It's not the best on Cassius, I will say, but generally you're going to be removing most of his attacks, so it'll work pretty well. So the healing overall every single turn really adds up, along with something like Ray or any other healing you might have. It kind of just tops you up and keeps you surviving a lot of these attacks. Also, Consecration is only a 2 EP cost. It heals and it gives you Fortitude, a tiny bit of extra survivability. It saved me many times, but also importantly, it cycles around those abilities, because sometimes you might have 3 abilities you don't really care about. Well, this only costs 2 to activate and it cycles to the next, which means you could use something that even costs 5 points next. It's just really good for cycling, helps with survivability, and then obviously you get the amazing healing. So that's the one that I use. For potential, it doesn't really matter too much either, like the other characters. I have basically complete garbage on him. Honestly, max HP isn't even really a good set, because weirdly enough, all healing in the game scales off of defense. So health is kind of a garbage stat just in general, and defense is infinitely better. I would say his first dupe is actually insanely good, because it makes it so that you can use a card, and then the next turn you could just Joker that same card from the graveyard back into your hand, which is insanely powerful. If you don't have it, then otherwise he can only draw from the deck, which is clearly not as good, but still works really well. I do have the second dupe on him, however, I gotta say, this rarely is doing much or helping me out at all, so I would say Ray's is probably 10 times better than this one. But I think Cassius is a great combo piece. Now, since Cassius now isn't as good as he was before, let me also recommend a couple of other potential characters. One being, actually no wait, I should redo this. Let's also talk about Nia, who is one of the other best characters to use with Renoa. Now, I have tested this character a decent amount, and I think I've found the best combination. So for G-Chord, I would probably recommend this one. Being able to choose the top 3 cards of the deck is incredibly strong. You can choose exactly what you need at that given moment, and usually you won't get too unlucky that you need all 3 of the cards or something, so it's not that big of a deal. Mute Accent, unfortunately, is not that good of a card just in general. I would almost recommend getting rid of it if it's possible, but otherwise I'd probably go with something like this, where you can choose what to discard, so you can just get rid of something like a Dirge Bullet, and so you're not really missing out on too much. Next, let's talk about Soul Rip. Now, you can do a fun little combo with Soul Rip, where when a card in hand is discarded, you do an extra attack with that character, which I think is a pretty fun combination with Renoa, since so many cards get discarded, especially since Nia also is enabling that as well, which can be pretty fun too, but it's also not really the focus of something like Renoa. It's just a little bit of extra damage, which can be good. Next, let's talk about Adagio. This is definitely one of the best cards that Nia has. This This is so incredibly strong when you get the draw 2, discard 2. It just lets you go through your deck so easily, and since Renoa doesn't really care too much about discarding, there really isn't that much of a downside, which is incredibly good. Obviously, if you don't get this one, then you could even go for something like this where you discard the top 2 and then draw 2, but I don't know if I'd recommend that as much because something could potentially go wrong and you might lose something that you really want. Next, Nia's Curiosity, obviously incredibly good as well through going through the deck where you can choose exactly what you're looking for. Sadly, it can't get any epiphanies. Now, the most important thing about the combination of Nia and Renoa is this Cassius interaction that she had with Shuffle no longer works. However, her ult still works, which is incredibly good. You discard all cards in the draw pile, so if you have a ton of Dirge bullets in there, all of them get discarded and you shoot all of them at once, which I've gone like 20 bullets at once before, which was incredibly strong. So Nia's interaction is definitely good because she has card manipulation and her eco skill is really good. Next, let's quickly talk about Veronica. This character is easily one of the best characters in the entire game and combos with almost everybody. She's just so self-sufficient at doing damage constantly with something like the Ballista. If you have something such as the Giant Ballista, you have constant AoE against every pack. You just have to use one ability and you sit back and Veronica's just a DPS on the side, which is incredibly good. If you don't get the Giant Ballista, then I'd probably recommend either something like the 50% chance to create an additional one, the Enhanced, or the Shelling. I don't really recommend the Piercing, even though some people like it unless you're trying to do a gimmick thing against a shield enemy. Next, we have Repose, incredibly good ability because Veronica is just getting so many cards of your other characters. She's a support who's also doing damage nonstop. Now, this is obviously an incredibly good one because it just automatically costs 0. However, if you can get the Divine Epiphany on this one to make this cost 0, this is insanely powerful. Being able to get 2 cards and one of them costs 1 less, you're basically going up 1 AP every time you use it, and then it gives a little bit of shield, which is obviously nice. I would only really recommend going for those 2 because they're definitely the strongest. Next, we have Pendant. Now, this doesn't really matter too much in conjunction with Renoa, but I'd probably go for something like either this one or this one. Now, I wouldn't turn it into a skill because that means it's an extra card for you to draw all the time. If it's an upgrade, you use it once and then it's gone. So you don't have to worry about drawing that card again. So I'd probably go with one of these 2. Of course, you can also use this one as well. Don't recommend either skills. Next, we have Kowalski, and Kowalski is another great draw card. Now, I would go for one of the ones that draws 2. Either one is honestly pretty solid, but I wouldn't go for any of the others. Now, if you can get a Divine Epiphany where it costs 0, then it's just another pot of greed. So if you have something like Kowalski and Repose costing 0, then you're getting so many free cards and able to just easily search your deck for some combo pieces for Renoa. Then we have Bombardment Prep, and let's be honest, it's not really that amazing. When I do a Veronica build, sometimes I even remove it. Even though it is a decent thing to have, it's not really the focus since Veronica is mostly just supporting and doing a little bit of extra damage. She isn't really the focus of the team. So overall, that's pretty much how I would set up the Renoa team. It does take some time. I will definitely say that when you have no gear at all, and you should only really start farming gear even a little bit once you can start getting gold gear. Otherwise, you're kind of just being completely wasteful. And once you can actually start getting some gold gear, you're going to see a huge power spike, and then you're going to be able to run her much easier without having a dedicated healer or shielder, because she's just going to start putting out so much damage that everything's going to die. I've had so many crazy runs so far. It's honestly kind of shocking that people aren't talking about this character more or putting her in a higher category, because she seems so easy to set up on average matches. She doesn't really need too much to start going. Even from the beginning, she seems to put out a pretty decent amount of damage. She combos with a good amount of characters. She can be a solo DPS, which is really nice, not requiring a sub DPS or someone else to do things. She has great single target and honestly surprisingly good AoE because she shoots so many bullets all over the place that she's able to kill multiple targets at once, because you're not just overkilling one target, you're hitting everybody at random. Now, sometimes that can be bad when you hit enemies at random because you might take way more damage than you're intending to, but still it causes so many crazy pop-offs. And also it kind of averages out the crit chance, because instead of missing 2 crits in a row and then you lose, you do 10 crits or you do 10 attacks and then half of them crit. Hey, that's actually not so bad. Doesn't feel so bad having not amazing crit chance on this character. All in all, I would say Renoa is, in my opinion, a top tier character. However, I would say that tier lists don't really matter in this game, so that's not that big of a deal. Now, I've tried her on essentially every single planet of the game, and she's been able to clear all of them incredibly easily. It doesn't really matter if the enemy is weak to her or not. If they are weak to Void, which I believe is the 3rd planet, then she absolutely mops the floor with them, and it's not even a fight. If they're not, I still think that she's incredibly strong. So if you at all were considering Renoa, I think she's an incredibly good character. I think think she's fairly simple to use and straightforward, and she doesn't require any other 5 stars to truly utilize. So if you're interested, then maybe give her a try. Anyways, that's my overview of Renoa. Thanks a bunch for watching this video, and I hope to see you next time.